Hi, everyone. My name is Andrew Seaman, LinkedIn's Senior News Editor for Job Searches and Careers. I'm coming to you live from LinkedIn's DC office. I'm not in my usual location, my living room today. So thank you so much for joining us, as always. I hope to have a great conversation with you all today, and we have such a great guest. But first, I want to ask you to introduce yourselves in the comments. Tell us a little bit about yourselves. Tell us what's going on with your job search, with your career at the moment. We already had so many people join the stream. We have John, Rodrigo, Rahul, Alexa, Manawara from Toronto. So just keep telling us a little bit about yourself, and then also connect with each other. Some of the great conversations that happen during these broadcasts are between two members, and then they take those offline and keep the conversation going. So maybe there's someone that you see in the comments who are looking to get into the field that you work in or have worked in, or maybe they work in the field that you want to get into, or they work in an area of the world that you want to work at. So connect with each other and, help each other. You can review each other's resumes. You can talk about strategy together. Maybe you can network together, or you could research, learn together. There's so many different possibilities. And there's research showing that people who job search together actually end up finding jobs faster than those who go it alone. So keep having those conversations, keep connecting. Good network strategy is a cornerstone to a successful job search. So keep that going. And then also get your job search questions in, because we have such a great guest today. She is a 2020 LinkedIn top voice in job search and careers and a recruiter. So welcome, Tejal Wagadia. So welcome, Tejal.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Of course. No, thank you for joining us. And, we have so many people in the stream. We have Carolyn from Tennessee, Fred from Ottawa, Veronica from California, Karina from Toronto, Paulor from the Philippines, Marsha from Arizona, and Ken from Washington, D.C., where I am today. So thank you so much for joining us, Tejal. And, let's start out by talking about what you want people to know about the job search process, because you obviously come across a lot of different things as a recruiter, from resumes to cover letters to outreaches. So for people who are listening, what's your top 3 tips for them?
Yeah, so I would say I would love to bust this myth while we have so many people watching. The ATS is not rejecting you. The human being like myself is sitting there and making that judgment call. And sometimes we even send your resume forward, but the hiring manager might say, I don't want to talk to this candidate because I have this other candidate that is a better fit. So when you hear people say the ATS is rejecting you, you need to beat the ATS, it's not a thing. A recruiter is most likely looking at it. And even if you get it within 5 minutes, or you get it at the middle of the night or 6 a.m. in the morning, it's either scheduled or that poor recruiter is working that late or that early. The second thing I would like to tell people is that depending on the industry, right? It's very industry dependent, but don't apply just for the sake of applying. Unless you meet, for most jobs, unless you meet 70 to 80% of the qualifications and the job duties, that would be the ideal scenario when you apply. That means you are close enough that we can move you forward. There are industries where, and there have been anecdotal evidence where candidates have gotten jobs with 50% or less qualifications, and that does happen. But for majority, I would say 70 to 80%, you need to meet the job duties and the qualifications. And last but not least, anybody that tells you to bypass the recruiter doesn't understand how hiring works. So when you send a message to the hiring manager, great, that's wonderful. And the hiring manager likes your profile, that's even better. But they are always going to come back to a recruiter like myself, who's their business partner, and say, hey, have you spoken to them? Have you, what is your judgment on them? Can we put them through the process? So we are your advocates. Our job is to fill that position. And one of the key metrics we are being held by, or held accountable to, is how quickly can we fill the position. So we don't take pleasure in keeping the job open 6, 8, 12 weeks. We want to fill that position. And sometimes in my own experience and experiences of other recruiters that I've spoken to, we have gone to bat for applicants and candidates, and we're like, no, this is the right fit. This is the right person for our culture, for our team. And hiring managers don't always see that, but we can be your advocates if you let us be your advocates. So those are the 3 things.
I think those are great great tips. And, we have so many people joining us in the stream. We have Dana from Ohio, Tracy from California, Janelle from Texas, Kay from Arizona, Akaria from the Bay Area, and Dana from North Carolina. And I think the tips you shared are going to be really helpful. And a lot of people, especially with the applicant tracking system, the ATS, I think it's such an important message to get out there that recruiters are the ones who are hiring people. So they're the ones reviewing everything. And also, like you said, the rejections, sometimes they come in the middle of the night, or sometimes they come immediately. And a lot of times that's because of screening questions, right? So if you're going through like an online website that says, do you meet these qualifications? Have you done this before? And you get an automatic rejection, it's because that company has basically set a bar that says if they answer no, we're not considering them, right?
Yeah, and there are recruiters who do use screening questions. I know when I post on Indeed asks me, would you like to not see any candidates if they don't answer these questions the way you want them answered? I'm like, no, I still want to see them, because sometimes you make an error entering an answer, right? We've all done that. So good recruiters will still want to, even though we have screening questions, we'll still go and look at those candidates. And historically, what I've done is, even if you say fail one of the qualifying questions, I'll still make my ATS setup that I send the rejection after I've reviewed it, not that the applicant tracking system will automatically send it. So while there are recruiters who do use the qualifying questions, most of us, I would say, are still looking at every single resume that is coming through.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because a lot of people, they think that there's some computer that's like, throwing all their resumes out the window, but really there is a human behind all of that. And before we get to questions, and I hope everyone's getting their questions into the stream. I already see a lot of people joining us: Stanley from Atlanta, Anastasia from Jamaica, Alok from India, Linda from New Jersey, Ellie from New York City, and Susan from Ohio. So get all your questions in. We're going to take them in just a second. But the question, I guess, that I'm going to ask first is, when it comes to looking at resumes and looking at applications, a lot of people, they feel that, they don't hear anything back immediately about an application. And for job seekers who are out there who say, listen, I sent this application in, never heard back, should they expect to hear back after an application, or should they only expect to hear if they are being considered? Because I think a lot of people, they hope to hear at least something.
Yeah, so I think they should expect, that is a very valid expectation, at least a rejection email, right? The least we recruiters can do is send a rejection email out. And a lot of us do that. We'll still send a rejection email out. One of the companies that I was at previously, I joined, and I saw that candidates had never been told that they were rejected or that we had closed the position. They never got a email. That closure is important. So what I did is I moved them along, and I said, hey, I understand this has been 6 months down the road. We have filled that position, but we'd love to talk to you in the future for any other opportunities. And I know 6 months was a little too late, and that's why ever since then I have this thing about looking at applicants every single day, because at one of my jobs when predecessor had not done that. So yes, it's 100% valid expectation that at least you get a rejection email. Sometimes it does take longer, because depending on the type of position, we get hundreds of applicants within a weekend. last weekend I posted a QA analyst position, and I got 100 applicants over the weekend, and I had to pause the position, and it's not open right now because I'm still going through those applicants to give them a fair shot. So if you see a position opened and then closed, don't think that it's that you're no longer being in consideration. It's just that we as recruiters have been overwhelmed by the amount of applicants that have come through, that we're going through them, and we're trying not to overwhelm ourselves to get another 100 applicants over the next week, and now we have to go through all of these. So it's just a matter of timing.
Yeah. And also, I think for people who are listening, one of the most important things is don't fall in love with the job and don't stop job searching until you get a job. So a lot of people, and I know people this in my life, I've probably fallen into this trap before. You apply for a job and you think, how can I not get this? I'm such a great candidate. But for whatever reason, and it could be any reason, it could be that the employer or the hiring manager knew someone who knew someone and they got the inside track. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that you're unqualified, but it just so happens that you didn't get it. So you just have to keep job searching until you get something. Don't wait around expecting for a position to just sort of materialize for you after you apply. Just keep going.
Yeah, I would say that until you sign on the dotted line of an offer letter, don't stop job searching. And even then, I've had candidates who have rejected offer after signing the offer letter and not started because they got a counter offer that was just too good to pass up, or they got another offer that they weren't even expecting, and they call me and it's like, I'm so sorry you have to do this, but that's just a better offer. And sometimes we can counter and sometimes we can't. And I always tell job seekers when I'm working as a recruiter with them, I'm like, you have to do what's best for you in your situation, whether it's my job or somebody else's job. Yes, it will suck for me because now I have to go back out there, but this isn't about me. This is about you and what you have to do to ensure that you're making the best decision for yourself. So yeah.
Definitely. And we have a question here from Alexa who asked, how far back in your last work experience should be added to your employment history on a resume? Or should you just add relevant work experience in jobs? And we actually just recently talked about this.
Yeah. So typically, I would say that if you have more than 10 years of experience, don't put that on your resume unless a job that you're applying for is requesting you to have more than 10 years of experience. We have job searching, and jobs have changed so much in the last 10 years, especially if we're all in technology. I don't care what anybody says. We're all in technology. We all use technology every single day. So if you're an accountant, the software, the payroll software that you used previously 10, 15 years ago might not be relevant anymore because there are new versions or a better software that's out there. So I always say, unless the job is requiring more than 10 years of experience, don't go past the 10 years of experience. It's also a great way to combat ageism.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And also it's a good way to eliminate the worry of how long your resume has to be, because if you limit it to 10, 15 years, the resume is not going to stretch on for 4 or 5 pages when you try and get things like from an internship that you had years ago, things like that. And we have a question here from Janice, and I think this goes back to the idea of open and closed positions. And she says, if a job has been posted for 2 weeks, but it's still open, should I still apply? Or will the recruiter or hiring manager even consider my application if they've already had a bunch of candidates before me?
Yeah, so I say this is one of the times when I say shoot your shot. You should absolutely apply even 2 weeks later, because what ends up happening is, even if I have a great candidate, say the candidate, this is such a hot market that I've had people accept positions and then decline them because they found a better opportunity and a better offer. So 2 weeks, even if you don't apply, I will never see your application, and you might be a great fit for that position. And now, because you make the assumption that you're not going to be considered, we'll never know. And apart from that, if you apply, you're still going to be in our database, which is what an applicant tracking system is. It's a database. So the next time I have a position, because companies grow, attrition happens, I go in and search within my database to see if there were other applicants that I could have spoken to. And your name will pop up and I will contact you and say, hey, I see that you've applied to this position. I know that we closed that position, but we have this other position. Would you like to speak to me about that? So that does happen. So yes, absolutely do apply. There is a chance that you will hear back from the recruiter for that job or for another job. Yeah.
Yeah, and actually we have an interesting question from Ralph that's sort of on topic when you mentioned ATS as a database. He says, if the ATS is not rejecting or promoting resumes, what's its purpose? I just paid to have my ATS friendly. My resume made ATS friendly. Sounds like I threw money into the wind.
Unfortunately, Ralph, you did. So what an ATS is a database. Think of it as an Excel spreadsheet. So what happens, to explain this better, what happens is when you apply, it goes into our database. And it's what we do, ATS is a database with a great UI. So recruiters and hiring managers can see your resume, can see your answers, the questions, your contact information, and all of that. There's no such thing as ATS friendly. You need to make your resume human friendly. This whole idea of the white text and making it ATS friendly and having the right keywords is more so about making sure that the job description aligns with your resume and your resume aligns with the job description. That's what you need to focus on. There are ATSs, historical ATSs that haven't done many updates where PDFs don't always convert, where text boxes and columns don't always convert, and things like that. But I think most companies have pretty decent ATS because most major ATS, if you want to be in business, you need to keep iterating, and most ATS have been iterating. It's a digital file. My friend Amy Miller has said it great. It's a digital filing cabinet. That's what it is.
Yeah, and it's almost like if someone's used to using Netflix, it's almost like Netflix. You can search things, you could search for terms and stuff like that, but really you're going to have everything that you need there. You could scroll through them. You could say, hey, I want to find this specific person. You could go into that, and then also it's just like an email inbox. When someone submits a resume, it comes in, the person can open it, look at it, say, okay, I'm going to put this off to the side. They're getting rejected or something like that. I think the one redeeming thing about them saying that something's ATS friendly is it probably was made to put hopefully your keywords in context or something like that. You're going to have to repurpose your resume for every job, but when you say ATS friendly, it could mean that it will perk up a recruiter that says, oh, they did this job before, they did something before, because really the ATS is the recruiter. So
yes.
They're the ones who are going to reject you and hire you or pass you along to the hiring manager. So I think,
so it's more so, and historically, when you were job searching, you would hand a recruiter a resume, right? And they would take it before computers were a thing, before applicant tracking systems were a thing, and email was a thing. You would hand somebody your resume, and they would keep it in a filing cabinet based on your skills and all of that. Like, if the person is well organized. What the ATS does is it takes the resume and puts it in a database. It's similar to a filing cabinet. It's just online.
Yeah. And speaking of the filing cabinet, we have a question from Melissa who says, often rejection emails state that they will keep your resume or application on file. Do they really go back to review those on file?
Yes. Good recruiters will and have done that. I do that. Many great recruiters I know do the same thing. Yes. The first thing we do after applying, after posting the job online, is go through our own database to see if we have anybody that matches that skill set. Because if you've already applied and if you're already in our database, excuse me, my cat wants to have a conversation too. So what ends up happening is I'll go and I'll search and I'll find your resume. So yes, it does happen. Sometimes with Certain companies, it might not happen as often, depending on whether they have enough bandwidth with the recruiter, whether they already have enough applicants that are coming in through the job posting. So it really just depends. But yes, recruiters do look at it.
Yes, and also you have a very handsome cat. So, and when it comes to the actual hiring process, we have a question here from Rick, who asks, "Can leveraging a connection short circuit the hiring process in the applicant's favor?" And I guess the question really is, if you have a referral or an inside source or an inside connection, how does that affect the hiring process?
Yeah, so I have. Having a referral and having a connection inside definitely helps. Most companies have internal referral bonuses. So if you find somebody and they're able to put your resume in front of the recruiter and the hiring manager, they might be eligible for a bonus for helping us fill the position. So yes, it can, especially if it's in the same department or if it's in the same manager. But at the end of the day, it's not going to just get you the job just because you know somebody in the position. This has happened to me personally, where a candidate will reach out to the CEO of the company. The CEO will come up to me and say, "Hey, Tejal, can we put this person through the process for this position?" And I'll be like, "Okay, they're not qualified for that position." And they're like, the CEO's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "They don't have the skills that we need for this position. I'm happy to show the resume to the hiring manager, but I can tell you right now that they don't have the skills." And lo and behold, I show the resume to the hiring manager and they're like, "Yeah, they don't have the skills. We're not going to consider them." So yes, it can, if you have the right qualifications and if you are a good fit, but it won't just get you the job if you're not qualified.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because I think a lot of people hope a referral is sort of their ticket to a job, but really it's just a ticket to consideration, or maybe a heightened consideration, because I've referred people who've got jobs and I've referred people who didn't get the jobs, and really it just means that you're going to get a look, but it doesn't mean that you're going to get the job. So always have that tempered expectation. And we have quite a few people in the stream actually asking about addressing gaps in resumes when they're going through the interview process. So if you have a gap, and I think a lot of people do right now after the pandemic, how do you address that on a resume? And also, how do you address that when it comes up during an interview? Like a cat.
Yeah, that's a great. Yeah, yeah, she's very needy. She's the neediest of my two cats. So addressing the gap, the thing I recommend all job seekers do, if you have a gap, even though it's during the pandemic or if it was during the 2008 recession, no matter what, when, why it was, just address it on your resume. Say X year to X year personal sabbatical. Nothing more than that. That's all the recruiter needs to know, that you've taken a personal sabbatical. If in that time you've been working, if you've been taking some courses to keep up with your skills, if you have an Etsy shop, if you have a blog, something to keep you engaged, I would list that instead. But if you were a stay-at-home parent, or if you were just job searching or anything like that, you were unemployed, just write personal sabbatical. And that's totally okay, because what ends up happening is when you don't address that is that the recruiter and the hiring manager are going to make assumptions. You don't want us to make assumptions because assumptions are never great. We don't know what's happening, and we will try to decipher, but just address the gap so we don't make assumptions. And I know it sounds bad, but as human beings, we make assumptions all the time. I try not to make assumptions. If the candidate is qualified, I'll call them. But biases are a thing. We are human beings, and human beings have biases. So just write personal sabbatical, and when you get to the interview stage, you can address that. And how much in depth you go in there, I would say, is dependent on you and how comfortable you feel with your situation. Sometimes candidates have told me, "Hey, I was taking care of a loved one." No big deal, not a problem. That's all I need to know. I actually don't even need to know that. Sometimes candidates have gone into too much details, and I've told them, I've guided them. I'm like, "You don't need to give me that much information we're going to move you forward, but moving forward with our company or any other company, don't give that much information because it can hurt you because of these biases. So address it in a one line.
Yeah. And I guess for that reason, like you said, where you just want to sort of know where the gaps are, not necessarily know where the gaps are, but you want that timeline, a chronological resume is usually best because recruiters want to see, okay, you were there, you were there, you were there. There was a gap, you were there, you were there, because they want to see that straight line of like, okay, where did you go? What was your career progression, right?
Yeah, and careers are not always linear, and that's okay too. But I would still recommend a chronological resume over a functional resume.
Yeah. And, talking about biases, one of the things that comes up quite a bit is ageism. And we have a few questions here about that. And we have one from Gustavo who says, what's your recommendation to avoid being disqualified due to being, quote unquote, overqualified? And then also we have one question here from Nina about how do recruiters adjust for hiring a more mature workforce? So what is your advice for older job seekers?
Yeah, so like I said initially, that anything beyond 10 years, no need to list it. That's one way to combat ageism. The other way is I've seen people put their year of graduation from college on their resume. You don't need to do that. Like I always say, if you have 3 to 5 years of experience, your degree, unless it's specifically required, doesn't matter. It just doesn't. You have the work experience that trumps the degree. If you're an entry-level candidate, yes, that's when the graduation year matters. So for the people that have 10, 15 years of experience, and you're trying to match, it goes back to matching the job description. If you've listed things that go beyond the job description, the recruiter is going to say, hey, this person has more skills than what we need. There's also paying what you're worth. So that means that we would need to have extra room in our budget to pay you what your skills are worth in the market. So that's why that overqualification comes in. It's not particularly about you being able to do the job that you're applying for. It's about the budget and the pay. So when candidates are job seekers are trying to take a step back, I always say, hey, it's great that you did all of these things. It's great that you've been a leader. That's not the job that you're applying for. You need to match your resume to the job description and match the lingo of your resume to the job description. If they're not asking for strategy, don't list that on your resume. If they're not asking for road mapping, don't list that on your resume. You want to show that you have done the job and that you can do the job moving forward. The other thing is that you also want to ensure to tell people that you want to do the job. If you're applying, sometimes it can be seen you're applying because you're unemployed and you just need a job. That's always the fear of the hiring manager. And I try to talk to my hiring manager about this. I'm like, yeah, they can leave in 5 months. So can the person that is perfectly qualified because they found a better opportunity, right? But the way to combat is, firstly, no more than 10 years unless the job asks for. Match the lingo on your resume to the job description. So yes, you've done some amazing work previously, especially if you've been a leader. But if you're trying to take a step back, that's great. But that's what we need to see. Can you do this individual contributor job rather than the leader job? There are still managers that are insecure about their leadership, so you want to cater to that. And no graduation years from your university degrees.
Got it. And on that same topic of dates, I know there's been some talk, I've seen chatter about this, of taking dates off completely from a resume. Do you advise that? Because I assume recruiters want to know when and where you were on a resume. It's just if you stop at the 10, 15 years, they won't be able to do necessarily all that math, right?
Yeah, so I would typically recommend not the month. You still need the years, but you don't need to put the months. So if you're trying to do that, if you're trying to take the dates off, take the month and the day off, not the year. So I would still recommend keeping the years on your resume. I am perceived as a job hopper, which is totally fine. I own that label, but there are still managers out there that want people to stay at a certain company for a few years. And that's something I combat every single day in my life, because I'm like, I'm a job hopper. We still hired me. Here I am doing excellent work. I say that to my managers jokingly, but I always try to explain to them, I'm like, it doesn't matter how long a person stays, it matters how much of an impact they have in the amount of period that they're there. Somebody can come in as a contractor for 6 months and do great work versus somebody who's been there for 5, 10, 15 years that's just been coasting along. It does, like, the length doesn't always matter.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's such a good point. And job hopping, or, just switching around in jobs is so much more common than it used to be. So it's not as much as a concern. And speaking of job hopping, it's much more common among young people. I know that. And we have a question here from Kara, which is basically, what is your advice for recent graduates? Can they put jobs that aren't relevant to the job they're applying for on their resume because they don't have that much professional experience? What's your advice for young job seekers?
Yeah, I would definitely put that on your resume. When I first graduated, and before I was graduating, I was working throughout my college experience for my bachelor's. So I put that on there. I would 100% recommend putting that on there. Just ensure that you are trying to relate how the job that you did, doesn't matter what it was, relates to the job that you're applying to. So say you are currently working at Starbucks and you're applying to being a software engineer. A part of being a software engineer, a great software engineer, is communicating with other team members and communicating with customers and communicating with stakeholders. So you can leverage your communication and customer service experience to put towards your software engineering background. So yes, would recommend putting that. If you are an entry-level graduate entering the workforce, that's the only time I recommend putting your education above your experience, because that's what matters. You're an entry-level graduate, and also put the projects that you worked on while you were in your while you were getting your bachelor's or your master's. The kind of project that you worked on also matters. If you've done any internships. So yeah, 100% do recommend putting your jobs on there, and you can separate your work experience from your school projects as well. So yeah, education, school projects, work experience is how I would personally template it.
Fantastic. And, I guess, we're almost out of time, but before we go, do you have any other resume advice that, you see a lot of resumes? What would be your number one tip for people to take away to say, if you have to do one thing, do this?
Yeah, take out fluff words from your resume. And what I mean by that is dedicated, hardworking, professional. All of those are fluff words. They're not quantifiable. There's no way I know by just reading your resume that you're a hard worker. There's no way that I know by just reading your resume that you're dedicated. It's just not, we can't quantify it. And the way I look at it, it's premium real estate in your resume, on your resume, that you're giving up by using these fluff words. Motivated is another one. So it doesn't, I've seen this from entry level to senior level. People just keep using these words. I'm like, please stop. I don't know what that means. Like, I can't tell from just reading your resume. What I want to know is quantifiable things that you can prove on your resume, that you can say, hey, I'm a senior recruiter. So for example, my summary says I'm a senior recruiter with 7+ years of experience that has placed over 1,000 people in my lifetime. That's quantifiable. When I was an entry-level graduate trying to enter the workforce, even then I would say don't put fluff words that are personality traits more than anything else on your resume. So yeah.
Yeah, my favorite fluff word is dynamic. That can mean anything.
Yeah.
I'm dynamic. Great. What does that mean?
Yeah. And I think it's partially employer's fault as well, because we list that on our job description, right? So job seekers are just trying to match the job description. And I don't know if you remember the rock star and the ninja phase and the thought leader phase and all of these phases. And I'm just like, can we just stop? Like, can we stop using fluff words? It's not relevant. I don't know what a rock star means. Like, are you going to go on the stage and perform? Like, you're a ninja. I'm like, are you going to come in my house and try to kill me? Like, what is happening?
Yeah. Only Ozzy Osbourne can be a rock star software engineer, and he's still in training. But thank you so much for this wonderful conversation, Tejal. It was so wonderful, and I see a lot of people saying that this was so helpful. So if you have,
Thank you.
anyone who is watching, please follow Tejal. We've been flashing your LinkedIn address at the bottom, and obviously you have Tejal and Coffee, your business, and you could find all of her wonderful posts there. Thank you so much, and please give your kitty cat a scratch under the chin for me.
I will. She's right here. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. You guys have been wonderful. Great questions.
Yes, and thank you all for joining us. We will be back Friday with another edition of Get Hired Live, so keep watching that. And then on Monday, my colleague Nina will be having a show about the winner's curse, how to prevent high achievers who score major successes early in their careers from heading down the slippery slope of failure. Who doesn't like that topic? That's at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And again, my colleague Nina Melendez will be talking about that. Thank you all so much for joining us. As always, please take care of yourselves. Things are still a little bit rocky out there sometimes. So make sure you're following your local health guidelines, you're taking care of yourself, because the only way you could get a job, the only way you could be a good candidate is to take care of yourself and be healthy enough to do so. And also, until we see you next week, best of luck.